Starbucks logo demonic? Stick around to the end. This might shock you.
I've been done with Starbucks for a long time. It's communist coffee anyhow.
Do you realize that Starbucks wanted to take Christ and Christmas off of their brand new cups?
Why in the world would a coffee company use a logo like this, which has nothing to do with coffee? Because the spirit realm is more real than the physical.
That company is not only one of the most godless companies on the planet.
And Starbucks, guess what? Just to offend you, I made sure to wear my Jesus Christ shirt into your store.
Starbucks is witchcraft.
I've spent the last few weeks going down the evangelical rabbit hole of the almighty satanic Starbucks. And what I found might surprise you. I'm completely kidding, it's absolute nonsense. But since we're here talking about it, let's dive in. So one of the main reasons I found that the evangelical fearmongers say that Starbucks is evil starts with their early logo. From what I gather, this started off with a very early rendition of the Starbucks logo that was a little too revealing for some people. The mermaid and or siren seemed to have their chest exposed even though it was a very crude and primitive drawing. They also claim that the legs of the siren and or mermaid were open, even though I think that's really just an optical illusion and not the intent of the original design. Also, mermaids and sirens have the bottom half of a fish, so unless you think seeing a fish without clothes on is inappropriate, I really don't get the argument. Like the progression of most things evangelical, this started off as a simple, inappropriate logo and has turned into a full-blown satanic symbol. They even claim that if you turn the logo upside down, you can see a demon. They also seem to take issue with the logo being a siren in the first place, because sirens were known to use their beauty and or sexuality to lure sailors into their death. And the most unhinged but widely spread theory that I hear evangelicals using a lot on the internet is that Starbucks is actually a front to just bring people into Satanism. The logic is, how could this company be so successful if Satan himself isn't behind it? Hope you're starting to see how their thought process works. And if you're like me and dig deep enough and long enough, you'll find hundreds of reasons online why evangelicals think Starbucks is evil. It won't take you very long to realize that none of their theories really hold any water or coffee at all. However, through all my research, I did come to two conclusions on why evangelicals take such issue with Starbucks. The first one we already talked about. Anything remotely sexual in nature, like their early logo, is bound to make any puritanical evangelical squirm. But the second conclusion I drew makes way more sense to me. You see, since very early on, Starbucks has been very open with their liberal stances on things like race relations and LGBTQ topics. A company that large and that popular with young people is a recipe for disaster when it comes to conservative values. The evangelical fear is that if their teenagers get coffee from there, then eventually they'll adopt their liberal progressive agenda, and the next thing you know, boom, worshiping Satan. Why is the end game of not being evangelical always end up in worshiping Satan? Like, there's no middle ground. Either you're singing oceans and crying at an evangelical altar somewhere, or you're clearly preparing your next blood sacrifice to Beelzebub. It's so extreme and weird. Look, Starbucks is one of the biggest targets anybody could take a shot at. And if you don't consume Starbucks because of the way they treat their employees or their aggressive union-busting tactics, I totally get it. But creating a religious boogeyman out of a popular company just because you disagree with their politics isn't only absurd, but it's flat-out deceptive and manipulative. But here's the heart of the matter and where I will inject my 2 cents. Evangelicals today seem to need 2 things. Something to hate and something to fear. Without these 2 things, evangelicals seem to struggle to maintain any kind of fervor for their religion. Evangelicals seem to quickly lose connectivity to their faith when they're not actively battling something. You know, instead of feeding the homeless, speaking up for the oppressed, or generally just loving the world around them, they've decided to take the opposite stance of Jesus, the one they claim to follow. And now, instead of being known for their love, they just continue to fight ongoing battles with anything they disagree with. Starbucks is just today's placeholder. Next year, it'll probably be something or someone else. And over the next 10 years, it'll probably take a bunch of different faces. It's clear to the world today that evangelicals are at their most passionate when they're fighting boogeymen. The problem is, they look the least like Jesus when they decide to take that approach. But I'll let you decide. Does drinking Starbucks put you at odds with God? Or are evangelicals just looking for any scapegoat to explain why their numbers are plummeting generation after generation while liberal companies continue to gain influence? Either way, I'd much rather drink whatever Starbucks is putting in their holiday cups this year than the Kool-Aid the evangelicals have been peddling for years. Happy holidays, everybody.